All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming and for connecting to Nearpod so you can be engaged in our lesson today. Um, I hope you had a great weekend, and we're going to go ahead and get started today. All right, so today what we're going to talk about is the causes of the Great Depression. And so we're going to kind of continue on with what we were discussing previously about things that led up to the Great Depression. And we're going to kind of go over the main actual causes today of the Great Depression. So our essential question today is, what were the root causes that led to the Great Depression? So by the end of this lesson, you will be able to discuss those main issues that led to the Great Depression and the fall of the stock market. Okay, so we're going to engage and explore today. We're going to engage your prior knowledge by kind of discussing what you already know. We'll kind of go through this whole lesson, do a couple of activities together, and we will explain how margin speculation and economic markets work, and then elaborate how these factors led to the Great Depression. And then we'll evaluate our understanding of the causes and how the economic system works. Okay, so we're going to kind of see what you guys already know here. So I would love for you to go ahead and answer this question here so I can kind of just get a feel for where you're at. So go ahead and answer. How much do you already know about the causes of the Great Depression? A, I know a lot. B, I know a little. C, I don't know anything. And that'll kind of give me an overview of how you feel about your knowledge about the Great Depression right here. So a couple of you answered, I know a lot. A good chunk of you answered, I know a little. And some of you answered, I don't know anything, which is totally okay, which is why we're going to go through this lesson today. Okay, so what I'd like for you to do is here, I would like for you to respond in this text box here, or you can try and find a photo that works, and answer this question right here. What wise financial decisions could a government make? And I've kind of already done the first one for you. So wise financial decisions that a government could make would be to pass social spending programs. So these are programs that could help different groups of people. So you have your low economics, your people who are in the low socioeconomic range that social spending programs could help. Those that may have Medicare or Medicaid or the elderly, those with disabilities, things like that. So go ahead and take a minute or so and type what kind of wise financial decisions you think a government could make. So right here, I would give the students about a minute or so to type their response and allow them to share it. And then I would go through and kind of discuss what they came up with and why they feel those decisions would be a wise government decision. Okay, so on this slide right here, what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to write down how you think a government could be wasteful with their resources. And so I've done the first one for you. Well, I kind of give you an example. So they could also pass programs without benefits. So they could pass programs that may not benefit a large group of people. Some of the programs that they are currently trying to pass right now could benefit a specific gender. So they could benefit women, or they could benefit a specific group of people, the elderly, the children, those who are in school, people with student loans. So those would be beneficial to those people. So if they're passing programs that really don't have much benefit to us as a society, these could be wasteful programs. So what I'd like for you to do right here is I'd like for you to type in the box right here. What do you think, how do you think a government could be wasteful with our resources? So again, right here, I would have the students type in their response or find a picture, and then we would discuss what they came up with and why they feel those would be good examples of being wasteful with resources. All right, so we're going to talk about dive deeper into a discussion of the Great Depression, excuse me. So the Great Depression was a massive financial collapse that affected the United States and other countries. We usually think of it as the collapse of the stock market, where this is kind of the main, main beginning of the crash, the beginning of the Great Depression, the crash of the stock market of 1929. But it was not just that one main event. But it was a massive financial collapse that affected the United States, but it also affected many other countries, especially in Europe. Several factors caused the Great Depression. That big one was the crash of the American stock market. So what we're going to do here is you're going to watch a video. We'll watch it together. You're going to watch a video about how the stock market works. And so you can kind of get an idea of why it was such a big deal that stock market crashed. So as you watch this, I'd like for you to kind of take notes on your own. Think about what you already know and write down some new things that you find, because on the following slide, you're going to write down something new that you learned about the stock market. So right here, I would have the students watch this video. It's about a 4-minute video. So they would watch this video about how the stock market works. Okay, so now on this slide, what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to write down one thing that you learned about the stock market that you didn't already know. So give the students a moment to write down what they learned from this video and why they chose that particular fact to write about. Okay, so now we're going to go through and we're going to explain how margin, speculation, and economic markets work. And we're going to elaborate how these particular factors led to the beginning of the Great Depression. Okay, so as you learned previously, the Great Depression was an economic collapse that greatly impacted the United States and many other countries. However, the economy just did not collapse overnight. It wasn't just one huge event that caused the Great Depression. There were a few factors that led up to it, and it wasn't just, it took place over a spread of time. So we're going to talk about some of these factors right here. Okay, the first one was President Hoover. He had a great optimistic view of the stock market. In 1928, he was elected to become president. And it was a landslide victory. Like he won, he just took it. And so the 1920s had been really prosperous for the United States. We had just come out of World War I. The men had come home and people were starting to get back into work, and the economy was great. And people were becoming more financially independent and financially successful. And Hoover, he emphasized the continued success of America in his inaugural address. And he spoke about how well America was doing. And when Americans are optimistic about the government and its economy, they are more likely to invest. And so many Americans began to invest their money in the stock market. So the definition of to invest is to spend money on the stock market or another asset with hopes of making money as the value rises. And people still do that today. They invest in a number of companies that are doing well. And so in the 1920s, many people chose to invest in the stock market. So the stock market is an exchange in which shares of public companies can be bought and sold by individuals. When stock market prices rise continually, the market is referred to as a bull market. The bull market of the 1920s encouraged people to buy more stocks. And so because it was successful, people continued to invest more and more money. However, on the other hand, there is what we have known as a bear market. This is when the stock market prices are declining. And this obviously would cause people not to invest in the stock market because of a potential loss of their money. By September 1929, the stock market in America had reached record highs, and people were really excited to make more money. The stock market was doing well. The economy was doing well. There was no reason for them not to invest in the stock market. Oops. Sorry, wrong one. Okay, so then we have what's called margin and speculation. Margin means to purchase on behalf of other clients. Sorry, that was my computer. Essentially, they were buying stock with the money that they did not own. If the stock market declined, a problem could arise if the stock broker made a margin call. And so this was a requirement for an investor to repay the loan. If the investor had lost that money with a declining stock price, they would be unable to pay the broker. And this is what began to happen with the stock market in 1929. So additionally, many people began to practice more speculation. They began to speculate that the market was going to continue to rise. And investors began to purchase more and more stock to make the price go up. And then they would sell the price of the stock. They would sell the stock when the price was high in order to make more money. As a result of the bidding, many stock prices did not reflect the true value of these companies. And if stock prices even fall even slightly, it could trigger panic in investors who were concerned about going into debt. So I know this is kind of a lot of information to take in, but I just wanted to check in and see if anyone had any questions about kind of investing and margin and speculation before we go on. Kind of just do a little check-in with you. All right, perfect. Okay. All right, so what I'd like for you to do here is I would like for you to match these main terms. So the main terms that we discussed were bear market, bull market, margin, stock market, invest, speculation, and margin call. So I'll give you a second, kind of just a little matching game for you guys to see how well you understand these particular concepts. And then I'll give you a second to go over that, and then we'll go through these as a class. So, all right. So spending money on a stock for another asset with the hopes of making money as the value rises. So this would be perfect. Good. Nice job. Okay. And then borrowing money from banks or brokers in order to purchase stock. This is good. Perfect. Nice job. An exchange in which individuals can invest in public company. Perfect. Good. All right. So when a broker demands a repayment of a margin loan. Perfect. Good. And then lastly, it's two more. When the stock market is consistently rising. Good. And purchasing stock in order to bid it up for a sell for a profit. Perfect. Good job. All right. Nice. Okay. So then after all this occurred, the stock market crashed. The optimism in the stock market was short-lived. On October 29th, 1929, a day that is known as Black Tuesday. I said Black Friday before. Sorry, I don't know why I called it Black Friday. Black Tuesday, nearly 16 million shares of stock were sold. But by November, the stock values had dropped nearly 35% and $30 billion had been lost. And so this caused a chain reaction, and margin investors were unable to pay back loans to banks and brokers. And so people lost a lot of money and banks began to collapse. On this particular slide, we're going to watch a video about Black Tuesday, the day that the stock market crashed. And so as we watch this video, we'll kind of come back afterwards and we'll discuss how this particular collapse in the stock market helped lead to the beginning of the Great Depression. So I would give the students a moment and we would watch this video. It's about 4 minutes about the crash of the stock market. Okay, so I would have them also go ahead and answer these questions on their own. So what is the Dow Jones Industrial Average? A company that investors can buy stocks in. B, an indicator that measures the values of large companies in the stock market. Or C, a stockbroker agency that lent money to investors before the Depression. So go ahead and answer that one. And then, Sorry, I pushed the wrong button. Next. Okay. So on the Thursday before Black Tuesday, how much does the stocks fall by? 6%, 8%, or 11%? And question number 3, the decline in the stock market resulted in bankruptcy for many corporations, closures, or a sale to the government. So after they answered these questions, I would go through on my side and I would see how many students got the questions correct and go over the answers to those questions after they answered them. Okay, so then now that we've kind of talked about the beginning of the crash of the stock market, we then have what is known as infrastructure failure. To make matters worse, American banks began to fail. Additionally, decisions by the government regarding trade turned to be unwise. On the following slides, we're going to discuss how these events contributed to the Great Depression. Okay, so the banks began to collapse. They had lent billions of dollars to speculators, and these speculators could not pay the banks back. So as a result, the banks began to close. Now, think about when you're depositing money into a bank, you expect to get that money back, right? Okay, so if you have a paycheck deposited, you expect that you can be able to withdraw that at any time. However, banks had invested their depositors' money into the stock market and also suffered major losses. And as a result, they could not lend out money or even withdraw that money. When the banks began to decline to lend money to their customers, it slowed down the growth of businesses in America. Additionally, bank runs resulted from a consumer's lack of faith in the banks. So not only could they not lend money, but consumers were very hesitant to even go to the banks to try and get loans or to have them lend money because of all the factors that played into the crash of the stock market. A bank run, so here's a vocabulary word that you want to make sure you know, is it caused by fears that the bank will collapse. It is when many bank depositors attempt to withdraw their money simultaneously. However, banks were unable to pay back their depositors, and by 1933, over 20% of the banks had failed. So think of the town that you live in right now. If there's 5 banks, that means 1 in 5 of those banks would have closed. Okay, so that's pretty significant. Okay, now buying on credit. So we adults do this today. We buy on credit. We have mortgages. We buy cars on credit. We have credit cards. So additionally, with the booming economy of the roaring 20s, many Americans had made large purchases on credits. It's kind of the same thing we do today. More and more stores had begun to offer installment plans, and an installment plan means customers are allowed to pay something off within over a period of time. When your parents buy a car, most of them have an installment plan, and they make payments on that every single month for a certain amount of time. However, people began to lose their jobs and the stock market declined, and consumers were unable to pay off their purchases. Not only did this affect consumers, but it also affected the economy, leading to the collapse of retail stores, and many retail stores had to close. Now, international trade. So as we learned previously, the Great Depression not only affected the United States, but it also affected many other countries. And so during the 1920s, we had a tariff act known as Hawley-Smoot, and this was passed. So what this did is it raised tariffs or the import-export tax on particular goods from foreign markets. The goal of this was to protect American manufacturing by raising the price of cheaper goods manufactured overseas. Tariffs were raised an average of 20% on imports. Unfortunately, this backfired as many other countries retaliated by raising their own tariffs on American goods, meaning those American companies who manufactured their products overseas lost business because they couldn't afford the import and export tax. As a result, this reduced global trade and the American export market, which dropped by 20%. So all of these factors kind of just snowballed. All right, so what I'd like for you to do right here is I'm actually going to put you in breakout rooms, and just one person
can fill this out here. Which of the last three factors do you believe contributed the most to the Great Depression? The banking collapse, the failure of the installment plan, and the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act. And I'd like for you to explain why, in your response here, which one you believe contributed the most to the Great Depression. So I would put the students in breakout rooms here, and I'd give them about 5 minutes. And then we would come back and we would discuss what they wrote and why they chose, which factor they chose and why. Okay, so we're going to evaluate here. So which president was elected in 1928? Theodore Roosevelt, Herbert Hoover, Franklin Roosevelt, and Harry Truman. So I'd have the students answer these questions. All right, so the next one, a period of sustained market growth is called a bull market, a bear market, a flow market, or an eagle market. Sorry, I clicked the wrong one. All right, number 3. When banks or brokers lend money to investors to purchase stock, the investors are buying on debt, buying on market, buying on margin, or buying on bank. Sorry, I keep clicking the wrong one. Just keep clicking. I need to click next. Okay, a period of sustained market growth is called A, a bull market, B, a bear market, C, a flow market, or D, an eagle market. Okay, by 1933, over blank American banks had failed. 5, 10, 20, or D, 50%. And last question, the blank act raised tariffs on international products. Hope you all get this right since we just kind of did an explanation in breakout rooms. Some of you chose that one. Hoover, installment plan, depression tax, or the Hawley-Smoot. All right, so I would click over here on the teacher side and I would see how many students got which question right, and then we would go over the answers to those particular questions and explain the answers. Okay, so now what I'd like for you to do here is I would like for you to draw a picture or a graphic that represents one of the causes of the Great Depression. If you are very hesitant about your artistic abilities, which I am, you are more than welcome to find an image here and that represents one of the causes of the Great Depression. Okay, so I would give the students about 4 or 5 minutes or so to draw a picture or a graphic here that represents one of the causes of the Great Depression. Okay, so we're kind of wrap up here. So I want you to answer here how you feel in your ability to explain the causes of the Great Depression. This just kind of helps me gauge where you're at and how you feel about this. And obviously we'll talk more about the Great Depression and its effects. But I'd like for you to answer here. How do you feel? A, very confident, B, somewhat confident, or C, B, somewhat confident, or C, not confident at all. Okay. So I just wanted to check and see what particular questions you guys had regarding the stock market, any of those vocabulary terms we went over, and just to see if you need further explanation on any one of those. Okay, good. All right. And then lastly, I would like for you to tell me, this is kind of your exit ticket here. What is the most interesting or surprising thing you learned about the causes of the Great Depression? So I would have the students put in their response here, and this would be their exit ticket for me, for them to be able to exit the lesson. It shows me that they participated and that they were engaged in the lesson. All right, so I hope you guys have a great day. Please email me or call me, contact me with any questions that you may have over this lesson or any of your assignments that are coming up. Make sure to check your calendar for anything that you have due this week, and make sure to turn in those assignments that may be missing or that you haven't completed yet. So have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.